today we are going to be making the best picnic blanket you have ever made. I have got to say I am so excited about this picnic blanket. It has ties, it's made out of jean fabric, it has a shower curtain liner. I promise you, you will be in love with this picnic blanket when you are finished making it. And I have a secret to share with you. And the secret has to do with this picnic quilt, and it has to do with a huge error I made when I made this picnic quilt that I do not want you to make. So stick around to the end of this video and I will share with you the biggest mistake I made that I don't want you to make. All right, let's jump into this tutorial. So a few stats on this picnic blanket before we get started. It is 65 inches by 65 inches, so it is a nice big size for a picnic blanket. Like I said, it has a shower curtain liner. It's a fabric shower curtain liner. The shower curtain that I did end up buying is 72 inches by 72 inches. It's very important to get a shower curtain that is larger than your project itself. I will have it linked in the description down below so you know which one I used. I used a heavier weight fabric for the back. You could just use a regular cotton. Quilted cotton is a little bit thicker. I also used a whole bunch of old jeans to make my squares. My squares were cut at 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and I did 11 squares by 11 squares. And the straps that I used for this project also came from my old jeans. So when I cut up my jeans, I actually cut the inseam strip out of the jeans. I just went all the way up to the crotch, all the way back down to the other end. That way I had a really nice long inner seam, and they're so nice and thick. I did 28 inches in length for these straps, and they were plenty long to even do a bow. So if you end up with straps a bit shorter, like 24 inches in length, they will still be perfectly fine for this project. So if you're already cutting up jeans to make squares for your quilt top, then just save that inner seam as nice ties. If you want to know how to actually make the quilt top itself, definitely check the link up above, as I will link to my how to make a jean quilt tutorial. So go check out that tutorial just to know how to put the quilt top together. As far as my quilt top, I did everything the same that I did in my quilt tutorial, except instead of linking my seams together, I actually ironed all of my seams open. Because you're sewing with so much thick fabric, I just wanted to make my project as flat as I possibly could before I put the entire thing together. I also have another tutorial I highly recommend that you check out. I will also link it up above as well as in the description down below, and that is 20 tips on how to sew with jean fabric to make a jean quilt. Those are very important tips if you're going to jump into a project like this as well. All right, so let's sew that quilt top together, and then we will meet back here and figure out how to actually sandwich everything together. All right, so your quilt top has been sewn all together, and now it is time to attach it to your shower curtain and to your backing fabric. So what you're going to want to do is attach your shower liner to your backing fabric. So the way that I did this was I laid both pieces on top of each other, and then I pulled back my fabric, and I had already pre-sprayed my fabric because I tried to attach my fabric to the shower liner. All of this 505 spray dried and it barely stuck to the shower liner. So then I went and tried a second time, and by doing it a second time it worked so well because I already had glue on my fabric. So then when I was spraying this again on the shower liner and then laying my fabric down and spreading it out, it stuck so well because you're essentially working with a sticky piece to a sticky piece. So that's just a little tip if you want to use 505 spray to baste your entire picnic quilt together. If you don't want to use baste and you just want to lay things on top of each other and pin all the way around, do that. That's totally fine. Once I attached my backing fabric to my shower liner, then I laid my quilt top on top of that. But I did not do it the way you would do a normal quilt because I did not want to add binding to this. The reason why I didn't want to add binding to my quilt picnic blanket is because I wanted to add those straps, and those straps needed to stick out the side to work properly. So your right side of your quilt top is laying on the right side of your backing fabric. Then pin around the entire outer edge, find the center square, and because our squares are 11 by by 11, you will be able to find a center square, and that's where you will place your straps. When you're placing your straps, you can either place them both facing the same way. Now, if you're using other straps, it might not matter at this point, but I was using my jean straps, and there's a nice side and an uglier side to your jean straps. I laid both of them facing upright. I would suggest actually laying one strap up, one strap down. That way, when it comes to actually tying your entire blanket together, you'll get to see the pretty side from both straps. Pin your straps in place, and then on the opposite side where you're putting your straps, you're going to leave about a 3 square opening where you're not going to sew. Now, before we take this to our sewing machine, we need to trim around the entire thing to get all of the excess shower curtain and back fabric away, but you do not want to trim away your excess from your straps. So when you get to that part, just pull out the straps, zip along there, and then just put the straps back in place, leaving about that 1/2 inch to 1 inch excess sticking out. It really does help because later on we'll be able to use that excess as reinforcement for those straps. If you want to see a better tutorial on how to trim away all of this excess, definitely check out the same quilt tutorial I referred you to earlier. I will have it linked in the description down below. And now it's time to take it to the sewing machine. Now make sure that you pin each and every seam open from all of your ironed open squares, and then you will want your jean fabric to be on the bottom and your shower curtain fabric to be on the top. The reason for that is that the shower curtain fabric is very slippery and it makes it difficult for the feed dogs to actually pull the fabric on through. Then you will line up the outer edge of your fabric with the outer edge of your foot. It will end up being about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And you will go all the way around. When you come to where the straps are, go over them, back, and then over them again. By doing that, you're just securing them in place a little bit more. And then you can continue sewing all the way around your quilt. Now, of course, a reminder, do not sew over that 3 square opening that we've left available to turn right side out. But before we turn this right side out, we need to clip away all 4 corners, as well as take away all of our pins that we have used to hold our quilt together. And now it's time to turn it right side out. Once you've turned it right side out, then grab something pointy like a chopstick to push out those corners. And then it's time to do a quick iron around the entire outer edge. You've got to be a little careful. Don't use a really high heat because remember, you've got that shower curtain liner in the inside. And even though it's a fabric shower curtain liner, there's that plastic feel to it and you just don't want to melt it. So as you're pressing all of your outer seams, just do it on a lower heat, and then once you've pressed a seam, just use some clips. I will link those in the description down below as well, and just clip it all the way around. That way your outer edge is ironed and it's held in place. When you're ironing your opening, definitely fold those pieces under. That way once you close that seam, it will have a nice crisp edge for when you want to sew your top stitch. By sewing your top stitch, you will obviously end up closing that opening. And when you're doing your top stitch, lengthen your stitch a little bit so it gives you that nicer top stitch look, as well as it just makes it easier to sew through such a thick layer of fabric. Now, as you go all the way around, of course, start with your back stitch and with your back stitch. But when you come around to where your straps are again, you're gonna go over your strap, back, and then forward again, securing those straps in place a second time, and then continue around your entire quilt. And now it's time to actually quilt our entire quilt together. To do this, I used yarn. I used a needle that I could wiggle my yarn through. I do have a trick for that. Take your yarn and lay it over your needle and kind of tug tight on the bottom, and then pinch your needle out. Now you've pinched your yarn enough that you should be able to wiggle the eye of the needle over your yarn and then pull the rest of your yarn through your needle. You're going to want to use yarn folded over so you end up with 2 pieces of yarn per stitch. And at this point it's nice to work with long chunks of yarn. That way you can maneuver through your fabric and get a whole bunch of those stitches done before you need to add more yarn. What I ended up doing was I stitched every other square all the way across, and then I would start the opposite because it's 11 by 11, it's a little off. So I would start the opposite square in, and then I would go every other all the way way across, and do the same back and forth all the way through. All right, so as you can see here, I already have a lot of my yarn in place on the corners that I want them. I'm doing every other square, and then what you'll do is you will put your needle in one of the corners. You'll push it all the way through to your backing, and then you'll pop it up through the opposite corner. Now, because you're working with jean fabric, you're working with a stiff waterproof shower curtain and maybe a thicker backing, it might be a little difficult, so just push down on the back of the needle to let it pop through a little bit more. And I ended up using pliers to pull my needle on through to the other side. Once it was pulled through, then I just pushed my finger on that center piece there, and I pulled my yarn on through. And then once you've added all of your yarn to your quilt, then it will be time to actually snip apart all of these pieces of yarn so that we can actually start tying our quilt together. I have a special knot that I want to teach you, so don't skip this step. Now, to do this knot, take both pieces, cross them over, and loop one side under the other side, but loop it through 2 times, and then pull it tight. Then you're going to do a second knot right on top of it, just with the opposite piece of string going underneath 2 times, and then pull it tight. By doing this, you are creating space between your knot and your fabric so that you will not end up ripping your fabric over time from this knot. And then I just trim my knot, leaving about 1 inch in length. So that is how you make the best picnic blanket in the world. But wait, I promised I would tell you the biggest error that I made when I made this picnic quilt. When you watch the entire tutorial, did you see any errors that I may have made? Did ya? Because I didn't until the entire quilt was finished, and then I realized my big mistake. I'm gonna open this up and I'm gonna show you. Do not do what I did. I'm a little scared to show you because then you're going to look at my quilt completely differently. It's a beautiful quilt, right? You can't see what I did wrong, can you? Can you now? Can you see what I did wrong? It's very, very clear. I used black yarn. Why is that a mistake, you ask? Because this is a picnic quilt, and black yarn tied in these little spots sure looks an awful lot like spiders. I should have used any other color except black yarn. I mean, it's too late now. This picnic quilt's just always gonna remind me of a whole bunch of spiders sitting on it. I may have to gift this away just because I'm not so sure I can handle that. I have a huge fear of spiders. That is my big error. Don't use black yarn, use any other color, and you will fall in love with your picnic quilt. I hope that you loved this tutorial. If you did, please hit that subscribe button because I post a new tutorial every single Friday. So I don't want you to miss that. Hit that notification bell so that you don't miss it. And as always, I hope that you have a wonderful day. And if you make this for this summer, let me know. Leave me a comment down below. Of course, if you have any questions, leave those down below, and enjoy your summer. Bye for now.